I'm sorry, Scott. Oh, that's what you wanted? Well, here, let me get this mask off. How's that? Does that make a difference, Scott? Good? All right. And get started with our prayer time. And so the books did come in. So if you would like to get a copy of my book, I'm going to start changing the study for April. We'll kind of begin doing my book. I don't know if we'll do every chapter because there's like 13 weeks of stuff, but so I'll think about that. But you will not have to have the book to do the study. I don't want everybody to feel like you've got to buy the book. You get me for free anyway. So, or the church pays, you get me for free. So, something like that. But anyways, I've got plenty of books that came in. I just got 5 tonight. So $20 is just a nice round number. Actually, if you want to save a couple bucks, if you give me $18 in correct change, I'll take 18. But I'm not giving $2 to everybody. Otherwise, you give me a 20. Or you can write a check. That's fine, too. You can write a check. It's fine. Anyways, we'll take care of that afterwards. Anybody who wants to see that. Like I said, we'll start in April with a study of that material. Give you time to get kind of ahead of stuff. And again, it will not be necessary to have the book to enjoy the study. So, all right, let me mention a couple things. So just to also remind you that tonight we're going to do prayer stuff, and then I'm going to sit down, and Brooke, you going to lead the thing tonight, or Susan? We're going to have questions. Anybody wants to discuss the motion that the Pastor Search Committee brought forth on Sunday and will vote for on this Sunday, they'll be here to answer any of your questions. So we'll take that for a few minutes, and then we'll get to the Bible study. So here's some things to be thinking about for a prayer time. Obviously, we want to keep Penny Lippert's family in your prayers. We will be doing the graveside service tomorrow at 11 a.m. at Hillcrest Gardens Cemetery, just on the edge of town, or I guess that's out of town, maybe? Yeah? Yeah, just right outside of town, yeah. So please keep all their family in your prayers. Also, Verna Jo Ellis, keep her family. Her sister Kay passed away this week, so there will not be any services locally because she's in Iceland. So Verna Jo can't even get there. So keep all them, that whole family, in your prayers. Also, we just got word a few moments ago that Steve Knowles is on the way to the hospital with some back pain. So we don't know anything else other than that. Oh God, on this day when we have had the chance to celebrate Charles Sawyer's 100th birthday, we're just overjoyed for him and his family that they were able to share this time together, and that so many folks came out from this church and from their friends and neighbors and from this community just to remind him what a blessing he has been to all these folks and to this town. It also gives us hope, right? That to celebrate his 100th birthday, there's hope for us as well. We're thankful for this gift of life and for the ways in which every day offers us new opportunities, new things to learn, new wonders to explore. Oh God, we ask that you would help each of us as each day that we grow and that we live and that we mark another year in our lives, that we would remain people who are always expectant for what's coming in the day. Always people who are curious to find out new things, to discover new things about this wondrous experience that we all share called life. That we would live all of our days and not just survive them, not just exist. And so in celebrating Charles's birthday today and seeing his engagement with people, we are reminded that we can live this life fully and abundantly all the way until we journey to you for eternal life. With that in mind, we also keep in mind those who we've lost recently. And we think of Penny Lippard and her family and ask that you would surround them with your grace. And for Kay's family, particularly for her sister, Verna Jo, we just ask that your grace would surround all of them. And in this time of grief, in walking through the valley of the shadow of death, they would cling to your hope in the resurrection. And that even in death, they may be thankful for a life well lived and for the blessings of your love that you have given these family members and this church and this world through the lives of Penny and through the life of Kay. Oh God, we also lift up Steve Knowles in prayer, not knowing what is going on, but just asking that that you would already be preparing doctors and nurses and the technicians and all the medical personnel who will meet them at the hospital, that you would give them clarity of mind to help them diagnose what is going on, that you will relieve their anxiety when things are happening to us and we don't know what it is. It is a frightening time, and also for our loved ones. So surround them with your peace and give them peace in this anxious moment. We ask that you watch over our friends who are traveling in New Orleans this week. Help them to enjoy these days and to enjoy just the prospect of traveling again as we're able to kind of get out as this pandemic continues to ease. Keep them safe on this journey in all the many ways that they need your safety. And help them to drink deep from the well of this life and the enjoyment of friends. We give you thanks for the recovery of Tori's mom. And we ask you to continue to help Chris be strengthened in mind and spirit and body. Oh God, for all these things, we give you thanks. We trust that we can lift these things to you and you respond. In each of our lives, in all the ways that we need you this week, just give us your grace and surround us with your love and help us to be the people that you want us to be. In Christ Jesus we pray. Amen. Okay. I actually have no idea how you all usually do this stuff. So, Brooke, Susan, Mary Van, do you all want to come up or? Do you all want me to direct questions first and see if somebody? Okay. So, you all heard the motion, right? And the motion is that the Pastor Search Committee is asking for funds from the church of the amount of $6,000 so that they may contract the services from Center for Healthy Churches in what they called advanced search assistance. Yeah, I almost forgot the last word. And in doing this, they will take all the information that we are gathering through these conversations when we make a church profile and a pastor profile. The church profile will kind of show the world who this church is and what we are about, what our community is like. And the pastor profile will specifically talk about what we're looking for in a pastor. And once we finish our discernment period and give that information to Center for Healthy Churches, then they will go through their networking process, vet all the people in their time that match our church, that fit our church, and then they will give us 10 names. Now, we are still free to use our networking through friends, previous pastors, colleagues. I will certainly be talking to a few people, but we will not be broadcasting the announcement of our search, okay? We don't need 100 more resumes if we have 10 serious candidates. Does that make sense? So that's kind of what the committee has proposed, and if you have any questions, you've got 3 people over here, and I'm going to let them answer those questions, not me. Oh, Van, sorry. Yeah. You're sitting over there, Van. I'm looking this way. You got 3 over here and 1 here, so sorry about that. Yep, Missy.
All right, so they give us 10 names. We look them over and we go, these are not fitting for us. Do we get 10 more names?
I think that's probably highly unlikely based on the service they are providing. The way this company works is they actually do more than just this piece of it. They typically, when they work with a church, start from before the profile, and actually they are part of the conversation and all that kind of stuff. But because we have in our
I'm just making sure you're being heard, Brooke.
okay, I can make this off too. Because we have Pastor Tim, who is experienced with Bill Wilson, who is the founder of the president of this company, not founder. They said, okay, we don't necessarily have to hold your hand through all of it. You can just do this end piece. But the end piece is very much tailored to, and I'm not putting your 100% that's not the word that you. We are doing this specific criteria, and the people they are going to provide are going to meet those specific criteria. So I guess there's a world in which we could give us 10 done, but it wouldn't really do good for them and their reputation. For that to be the case.
And these are 10 people that are actually seeking a position, not 10 that we could sway, or a few that would be swayed.
They have been vetted, so they're not just going to say, oh, this guy over here is a great pastor, meet your criteria, and give us the name.
Right.
The people will know they're being.
Okay.
So, but they may not be people who. Yes.
We can choose the podium, so we can. We're all on the live stream.
That's what concerns me.
Well, while you're doing that, Brooke, I will say, so Missy, there of course, there's no guarantees. You know, that's with everything in life. There's no guarantees. Every person we get, however, will have seen all of our materials. Center for Healthy Churches will have given them the material and discussed with them, and all 10 would have agreed to say, yes, I would like my name to be here. Most of them, maybe not any of them, are currently looking for a church.
And that's what I was gonna say, so that's where it deepens our search, is if we put it on the message board for CBN, for example, or the Southern Baptist, the people we're likely to get are people who are, for whatever reason, actively looking. These are reaching out to people who may not be actively looking, but they're talking to them. I'll liken it to our pastor, who was not actively looking when he decided to move to another church. So they're not handed with people that are so happy where they are that when they know we're looking for them, they're going to say no way. But they may be people who wouldn't be applying necessarily just to an open message board either. And again, I kind of
Missy, did that answer your question?
Yes and no, I mean, for the cost, I'd like to say they're gonna guarantee,
Yeah.
but
Right.
that's not,
And that's why we're saying it's not going to be just these 10 people and no one else. We are still using, again, networks that we have, whether it's Pastor Tim, or we could say, hey, Kendall, do you know anybody? Or if you have a friend, I've already had people come up and say, well, do you know this pastor at this church? He's really good, and we've actually gotten a couple of resumes already, and we haven't even told people we're actively doing that. So it's not just like this 10 and we can't go outside of that at all.
Yeah.
Who are these people on this committee that choose, that we ask them to choose? What's their background?
So Bill Wilson is the founder of that, and I'm actually going to defer maybe a little bit just because you know Bill and you can provide a little bit more information about that.
Sure.
Because
Sure.
there's a couple of different organizations and
So, Bill Wilson is the founder and CEO of Center for Healthy Churches. It's kind of becoming, if it hasn't already become, kind of the premier church consultant organization for churches like ours, for CBF congregations across the Southeast and the country. Before he founded this company, he was the executive director for the Center for Congregational Health. Similar words, slightly moved around. So the Center for Congregational Health is based out of Baptist Hospital in Winston-Salem, and he was the executive director there for about 10 years before he decided that organization with their trustees wanted to go to a particular way of doing transition ministries for churches, one of which was something called intentional interims, which is a very prescribed way of having people be interim pastors at churches. I don't know this for a fact. This is Tim's thinking, so don't quote me on this. My sense is that he kind of felt his calling and direction was one way, and the trustees of the organization was another way. And so he began Center for Healthy Churches. Has a very strong reputation, even beyond Baptist groups. The programs they do now are largely ecumenical for Baptists, Methodists, Episcopalians. He's got consultants. So I would encourage you can Google them on your phone, or Missy's already doing that. So Center for Healthy Churches.
Got pictures of a lot of their staff.
So, yeah, and he's got an enormous consulting staff. Now, he doesn't pay them full time. I think they've only got a couple full-time people, and everybody else works based on what they do for assignments. So, yeah.
I think when I spoke with him, he said that he had approximately 30 employees across the country that works for him that does this. Do we know any churches in this area that use this service?
A number are, we'd have to call. We do know, and he gave us church profiles for us to look at so we could know how to make one for our church. And First Baptist Wilmington was one of the churches. First Baptist Church, Rome, Georgia was another. What else? There was one in Tech.
Baptist New Bern, I believe, was
It
one
was
we
another
looked
one.
at.
Yep.
Um,
But we'd be happy. I think we can. I mean, we can
can get
send
that
you an email
information
with
if
it.
you
But
want to.
I know a number of churches that are using them. I would say in terms of churches that have a CBF affiliation, I'm going to guess. It's a guess, but I'm going to guess a quarter to a third of them use him on every transition situation, if not more. But a minimum of that, a quarter to a third. I'm going to guess, but.
And I think, go ahead, Kevin.
I'm sure they offer a lot more services we could spend a lot more money on because I hire consultants. And if they're good, this sounds like a bargain because consultants, good ones, are very, very expensive. I spend a lot of money trying to hire people, and in the last 2 years, Indeed is terrible. You see their ads, they spend all their money on advertising, their results are terrible. My experience, just spend a lot of money with them. But you know, consultants, they're really good and more than worth their money than you realize. And what I'm saying is, that price to me sounds like a bargain. Like I said, I'm sure they do a lot more than this for churches.
Susan, you mind sharing what the whole package was?
Yeah, so we started out, Kevin, like you said, asking about the whole price. And basically, the cost for starting at stage 1, working at creating profiles and all of that, was $25,000. And then when he realized that we were working with Tim, then he's like, well, he knows the process to get us to creating profiles for the church and the pastor that we're looking for, so that's where the price came in at $6,000.
Friends and family or something like that, I don't know. Thank you, Tim, for being friends and family.
So that's, I mean, to Kevin's point, in the nonprofit world for transition services, 25,000 is kind of the baseline.
Yeah, it was.
At which you get, a board gets about 3 candidates to consider. And so the offering here, I agree, is a good investment. Not to mention we have some, in our family, we have some experience with Center for Healthy Churches and just think they're a phenomenal organization and know some churches that have done all kinds of things with them. And so I think it's not only for this particular moment, but as the church goes through life, I think there will be other opportunities that we'll find to be able to very much take advantage of what they have to offer in a lot of different aspects.
And we want to be clear, we know that this is new to all of us. We haven't looked for a pastor in 15 years. I don't think this was an option 15 years ago, in part, is one of it. And so we just want the congregation to know that we spent a lot of time amongst ourselves discussing this. This is something we've never done. This is not, $6,000 is not a drop in the bucket necessarily. We are just, when looking at what we had before us as a committee and what you guys have called us to do, and using the resources we have now, the things we considered were, one, there are 33 other churches in North Carolina looking for pastors, Baptist churches. That's not a small amount necessarily. I don't know how many pastors are out there, but I mean, you want to think about how many qualified good pastors are out there for what we're looking for. And so that was one thing that we were considering. We're kind of, like the job market for anybody these days. You want to hire somebody, you're competing for them. And that's what part of this profile is going to be, is us telling everyone, this is who we are, this is why you want to come to us. The other side of that is, do you fit with who we are and what we want? And that's where we think this service is going to be very helpful, because just putting up First Baptist is accepting resumes. as Baptist churches, you can walk into any Baptist church in Gaston County and you're gonna get a different congregation, you're gonna get a different, you know, just different things they're looking for. And so imagine all of those different pastors coming to us and then having to process through. I'm sure some of them we could probably quickly look at and go, ooh, maybe not. But utilizing people who have a skill set to work through, I mean, if you've ever looked at resumes in your career, some of it's code. Sometimes this word looks really nice on paper, but what that means is I'm not really good at something else, so I'm putting this word instead. Or, you know, and so there's just, it's not about us not being willing to do that, but it's about the fact that that there now exists a resource that can help us find candidates who are more specifically tailored to what we need, so we can spend more time talking to these people instead of having to spend as much time going, okay, okay, you look kind of good, maybe you're kind of, I don't know about this, you know. And so that's sort of, I think, how we felt. Van, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I don't agree. It's good. We went through, Becky, the last time when we hired Kendall, we went through, what, 100 or more resumes?
115, I think it was, about 115 resumes.
115.
So 115.
And we, you know, a lot of them are waste of our time, you know, drug the process out.
And again, as Tim pointed out, these people are going to be people who know, like, they're not just kind of like, maybe I want to go to this church, maybe I don't. They should be, when we say serious candidates, that's what we mean by serious. They are serious about going through the process with us.
Reeves?
This is the world we live in. I had two meetings this week. One was at the Carolina Hospital Foundation Board. They know that 2 years from now, they're going to be facing a huge shortage of nurses. And so they're already working with individual companies to help them do the same thing we're trying to do and be more attractive to those nurses who are there, who are there. Every school, I work with 11 school districts in this region. Every one of them is facing huge teacher shortages now with the expectation that a large number of teachers are going to retire over the summer. And they're all looking for the same thing. How do we posture ourselves so that we have the best chance to get the best available candidates out there, realizing that there just simply aren't enough nurses, there aren't enough teachers, and my guess is there aren't enough pastors that we would want to consider this church happy and willing to take those jobs out. Again, the amount of money, you certainly don't want to throw it away, but most of the searches that I've been part of, you're talking about $25,000.
And that is part of it that I didn't mention is the geographical reach. If you're advertising on North Carolina message boards, you're probably only going to get people from North Carolina, maybe South Carolina. They've worked with churches from Texas to Alabama to North Carolina. So
Mid-Atlantic.
their network of candidates is beyond what we would probably get just advertising with like Southern Baptist or CBF or that kind of thing. So,
One along with the previous question, she asked is, if we don't choose any of these 10 that they give us, do we have to pay another $6,000 to get another 10, or do they furnish another, or they furnish us unless we fill another contract?
I can't remember if I don't think, I'm not 100% certain on that, but I would think if they don't give us 10 we like, we certainly wouldn't want to go back and pay them $6,000 more, whether, I mean, if they don't give us 10 we like the first time, I don't think we're going to be real happy with what they do the second time either way, personally, but I don't know that answer and I can get that. I think we can email Bill Wilson and get that.
And I would say too, Ken, that one of the things that we've talked about with the committee is that, or I've talked about with the committee, is that as you go through the process, there's going to be candidates that look better than other candidates, and at a certain part of the process, you begin getting down to 3 and then to 1. And I've encouraged them as they go through the process to don't burn any bridges. Like when you contact the first ones to say, we thank you for being a part of this search process, we're going in another direction, to also say, if things don't work out, would you be okay if we would come back and talk with you? So part of that is to make sure we don't burn bridges, so that if we get down to one candidate and at the last minute things don't work out, we don't have to start from scratch. We can go back to the next best candidates and go from there. So we want to use this service to the fullest of our funds.
And there's never a guarantee. If you work in HR and advertising for help, Indeed or wherever, there's never a guarantee, even if you pay for an advertisement or pay to post on these websites, that you're gonna get the best qualified person or someone that you're gonna want. And so it's not throwing out the money if we don't get the 10. If we go and post somewhere, pay a couple of $1,000 to post on a website, and we get 100 or 200 resumes, and then we look through them, and we don't see any. So I wouldn't think of it as throwing away the money, because unless you've been out there looking or helping trying to hire people, whether it's on the personnel team here at church or in your own company or whatever, it's this right now, this day and time, is very difficult to hire good qualified people. So this is an edge to help us attract some people that we hopefully would be wanting to hire one of the 10. So.
And I think just,
Note that we had in email, there's a number of churches searching.
there were 33, it could have changed.
Suppose that this committee is sending this same 10 meals out to 30 different churches.
I don't think that's how, we were told that's not how it works. So it's not like,
I can see some of the names duplicating on things they're sending to other churches.
so the way it should work, I can't speak for what actually happens, but the way we were told it works is once we have created our church profile that says who we are, and once we've created the pastor profile that says who we are looking for, they take that specific information, and that's the information they are using to vet through these resumes. So are there churches who could be looking for similar things? I guess. But I don't think it would be likely that it would just be, say, the same 10 people going out to 20 churches, because I find it unlikely that 20 would be.
Some of the names would be duplicated from one church to another. I can't help but believe that would be true.
You're looking, I'm sure you're right. Yeah.
Sure.
I would think so, but it's the same with anyone who puts a resume, who sends us a resume from online. They've probably sent their resume to
20 other places.
the 33 other churches too. And so I think that we've actually asked Pastor Tim that, is it fair to ask somebody, are you actively in a conversation with another church? Because, if somebody says I'm the final, if we start getting our hopes up on someone and it turns out they're the final candidate somewhere else, that's something we would want to know, and that's something we've already sort of thought through, is getting that information from them as well.
And if we don't use these services, and we're out looking on our own, we may talk to people that, we may start looking at people that many other churches are looking at also. So I think the problem would be even worse if we didn't use this service.
And that's what we're hoping with the expanded geographical area, is that maybe we'll get some people that, and again, if these people aren't necessarily actively looking for congregations, they may be someone that they haven't thought about, and maybe they looked at our profile and they thought, wow, that's a church that I'm going to be at. Mm-hmm.
And I think, Ken, your point, I have no doubt that there'll be some duplication. And that's why the profile is so important, so that you
Right.
can help people make a decision. We had a chance to go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to take a job there, until you found out how cold it was in the lab.
I'd like to thank y'all for that, by the way. I'd have stayed here, just so we're clear.
We were going to leave you behind.
That's fine. I'm good with that.
All right,
Anything else?
any other questions? We want to make sure we have time.
Question, and I think I know the answer. Would we consider a first-time pastor
That's something we'll find out.
any real experience?
Well, and that's what our next congregational conversation is about, is finding out what type of pastor the church is looking for. So the committee, we've kind of discussed our own thoughts on that, but we want to know what the congregation's thinking on that. So on March 6th, we're hoping as many people as possible will either come in person to the conversation or will fill out the form, because we're going to be asking some really specific questions about what type of pastor do y'all want to see. If everybody wants a first-time pastor and that's what they're looking for, then I guess we're open to that. But if everybody says, you know,
For me, with a number of ministerial students when I was in college, and there was several of them that I would love to have for a pastor. But they didn't have any experience. They just,
well, and we've,
and how they worked out, well, one of them wound up being a pastor of a large church in Columbia, South Carolina for a number of years, and they had an enormous growth program.
what we've said is we're trying not to have such a stringent criteria that we would automatically box out someone who might be the person God is leading here just because they don't fit exactly within. We don't want to create this box that everyone has got to fit in this square, perfectly square hole. Now we're going to have criteria, yes. You know, if we, you know, I'm going to use something completely outlandish. If we don't want someone who has a giraffe phobia and they have a giraffe phobia, okay, maybe that's a, you know, whatever. But as far as, you know, there might be someone, maybe we aren't thinking we want someone over a certain age, but there's someone who's a little bit over that and they are exactly what we need. Maybe we thought we didn't want somebody under a certain age, but for all the other criteria, they're exactly what we need. We're trying not to just set up such a stringent set of criteria that we miss just who God is calling to us. But again, most of that's going to come from this congregational conversation. We want to know what our congregation wants. Not what I want, not what Susan wants, it's what we want. And what God wants for us, more importantly.
All right, any other questions? All right, if we're good, I've got 19 minutes to get to the done with the parable of talents. So, I hope this was informative for everybody. And if you have some more thoughts, you've got 4 people from the committee here tonight. You know their phone numbers. You know their email addresses. Contact them. Don't wait till Sunday and have questions afterwards. If you've got more thoughts, more questions, contact them before Sunday. All right? Great. Good conversation, y'all. Okay, let's go to Matthew 25. And I'm going to try to hit the high points today with this. And so we've talked about reading these parables as stories that Jesus told. And from the perspective of how do we read stories? And so the first thing in a story is how do you set it up? What's the setting for the story? What's the context of the story? And for Matthew, this is a middle parable in chapter 25 of a trilogy of parables. And they were all set up in chapter 24 of Matthew in Matthew's version of Mark's apocalypse. Mark 13 is an apocalyptic chapter. It's a chapter about the end of times as Mark saw it and understood Jesus to talk about it. And this is that 24 chapter of Matthew is Matthew's version of that. So all this leads into these parables in Matthew 25 with the end of times in mind. I'm not going to go through all the details that I had such great notes on today, but I want to just ask you a question. When you think of the end of times, or that Greek word, the apocalypse, What comes to mind for you? What do you begin thinking when someone says the end of times, the apocalypse? What comes to mind for you?
That it is different for each of us. For me,
Okay.
in my life, it comes at the same time.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Pam. What else? Chaos. We think of chaos when we hear the end of time apocalypse stories. Yep. What else?
I think of the series, the Left Behind series, it's been gone.
Yep.
Whatever happened.
Sure. Yep. The Left Behind series. Yep. I'm sure we've also seen some movies or TV shows about that stuff. Yep. What else are we thinking?
I think I'm gonna be gone before then, my end of time is coming quicker.
Think I'm be gone before then? All right. Anything else? When I was a teenager, job I had, I worked at a hot dog stand, and cars drove up, put the tray on their window when you rolled the window down and put that on. And I worked with a guy who just thought that the end of times and the rapture was going to come anytime soon. At their church, they preached about that. And I told him, I said, well, I'm going to college next year. Do you mind letting me have your college fund since you're not going to be needing it? He didn't think that was too funny. So that's one whole thing we think about. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think outside the box and not think from this paradigm that we all have about the end of times. And think, what else could the end of time mean? Outside of this paradigm that we've all talked about. What else could that mean? Okay. What else?
A meteor hits the earth.
I'm sorry?
A meteor hits the earth.
Okay. All right. So you're thinking of non-religious things. Okay. I want you to go beyond the earth ends. What else can the end of times mean? The end of our lives, times, can be one thing. What else?
Judgment Day.
Okay, Judgment Day. It's still kind of in that parameter like this. I want you to squiggle way outside the box.
Some kind of a renewal or a rebirth.
Can be, yes. Renewal. So this can also mean end of an era. Okay. So 1492 in the civilized Western world was the end of an era, was the apocalypse in one way. Okay? And it had all the chaos. There was lots of chaos in the Americas, right, for the native peoples. Lots of chaos for them. Another way to be thinking about the end of times is when there's big moments in societies and everything is different. Okay? And I bring that up because we really don't know exactly what Jesus meant by the end of times. We kind of focus on this apocalyptic end of times, rapture, all this stuff, and that may be the way he meant it. But there's also other evidence that he could have been talking about there's a new era coming. There's a new time coming. And of course, the Christian church is a piece of that, right? Christian church comes out of that, and the Roman Empire is transformed within a couple hundred years. So just want that to be out there as well. So with these two things in mind, we're thinking about these things. Let's read the parable in chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. And we're going to first look at the plot, so we'll just read the whole story through. For it is as if a man, going on a journey, summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. You can underline that. Then he went away. The one who received 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had given 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. The one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, Master, you have entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents. His master said, Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. And the one with 2 talents also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over, you entrusted me with 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But the master replied, You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather what I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers. And on my return, I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But the one who has nothing, even what they have, will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And as you have noticed, at the end of Matthew's judgments, parables of judgment, somebody always ends up where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay, so the plot. Let's think about the plot. Don't think so much about the words that are said, but think of the action in the plot. We'll get to the words and the characters in a moment. So it begins with this rich man who goes away for a long time, leaving his servants in charge of his property. The tension is there at the beginning of the story, right? Before you hear anything else. If you'd never heard this story before, the rich man goes off on a long journey and leaves 3 servants in charge. You're already thinking what? At least one of them is going to mess up, right? That's the tension of the story. It's there at the beginning. We know this is a story of failure. Somebody is going to fail in this story. Got to find out who. So, the first comes. Each are given this money according to their abilities. That also brings the question of differing abilities. It also sets us up. We know there's a tension here. We know someone is going to fail. Now, I should also mention a talent is a large amount of money. Now, there's just different estimates. It's hard to kind of get a sense of exactly how things are valued. But all biblical scholars think it's worth several years' wages for a peasant worker. One of the better sources, commentaries will look at, estimated 15 years worth of a worker's wages. So that means the first guy was given in charge 75 years worth of his wages that he had to watch out for. And the next one 30 years, and the last one 15 years. So we use that as the back of your mind. So immediately, the first 2 go out and invest this money. And we're told they're good investors. They double the money. They double the master's money. The third person, however, and as we've seen these parables, Jesus uses these trilogies all the time. A rabbi and a priest go in a bar, and then somebody else, that's the joke of the story. So the third person is the joke of the story, and he does something differently. And that way, it follows the story tale, the way stories are supposed to go. And he does something different, and what does he do? He digs a hole in the ground and puts the money there. Now, this is a part of the way the story doesn't really make sense to us. We would think that's just dumb, right, that he does this. However, there is a passage in either Exodus and Deuteronomy, and I know a book where it tells me exactly where it is, and I left it at my library this morning when I got here, and I wasn't finished with my notes. So I can't remember what it is. If somebody has a good study Bible, it probably tells you. So if you find that, tell us. But I will try to do that in a couple weeks when we come back, I'll give you that piece. But so there's a passage in the Old Testament which would lead you to believe that this man, the peasants listening to Jesus, okay, even though Matthew says this was a story for the disciples, it probably originally was told to a crowd, at least at one point. The peasants who were listening to the story would have been thinking, I'm not going to take chances with 15 years worth of my wages. This guy is prudent. Because in the Old Testament passage, it says if you are watching somebody's valuables for them while they're away, if you just stick it in the corner of your little house and someone steals it, you are accountable for their money. You did not take care of their valuables. You have to replace that because you were entrusted with this. However, if you bury it in the ground, safely hide it away, and somehow it's still stolen, you are not responsible for that because you acted prudently. So this third person does exactly what a poor working person might have done with somebody else's valuables. Okay? So, peasants listen to the story. They hear these three workers. The first two go out. One guy takes 75 years worth of wages and immediately invests them into the marketplace, whatever the marketplace was then. The next guy takes 30 years worth of salary and does the same thing. If you're in the crowd and you're a peasant and you hear what these three people do, what are you thinking about these people? Missy, go ahead. Which were smart? The first two were smart. Okay? Dickie? They were risk takers, right? They were good capitalists. But I think you are thinking like 21st century Americans. I don't think you're doing a very good job of thinking like first century Jewish peasants. How does a Jewish peasant make up 75 years worth of wages if he loses that money investing it? Yeah, it may cost them their life. So as a peasant would have heard the story originally, they might have thought these first two stewards were crazy. They just frivolously invested their master's money in a rising stock market that you are surely going to lose everything and be thrown into jail. In the peasant's mind, these two guys probably would have been thought of as crazy. And the third person, which think about Jesus' parable. Who was the one that did the right thing in the parable of the Good Samaritan? The first two guys or the third one? The third one. Oftentimes it's the third one that does the right thing. So here in this story, the third one does the prudent thing. As a poor worker who could never make up 15 years worth of wages, he buries it in the ground so he's not responsible for it. I'm sorry? Right. Yeah. So, it's hard for us to capture this because we live in a different economic system than them. And because most of us are people of some means. If we would lose a huge chunk of money, it would hurt a lot, but we wouldn't fear about going to jail for the rest of our lives, right?
Maybe the third guy was old and he didn't have time to go through the stock market crash.
Yes. Yes.
His stewardship.
So Tom, when my wife invests people's money, at a certain age, she starts getting more and more conservative, right? You don't want to waste it. Okay, so this is the key part of the story that we don't often get. All right, let's shift to the characters. I'm sorry I have to go fast tonight, guys. Let's shift to the characters. And let's think about the words that are said about the characters. The very first thing, and they each received talents according to their ability. How does that impact the story for you? So this third guy, you going to say something, Missy?
No, I was saying he wasn't entrusting to them any more than he knew they could handle.
Okay, right. And so the third guy is the one that he knows is least likely to handle this well, right? Right? So, and he kind of proves that out in a certain way, right? Because he takes the no-risk opportunity and buries the money. So that's the first thing that stands out. The second thing is in their own words. The NIV Bible does this better for this kind of preacher talk than the New Revised Version. But each of them, when the first two come and hand the money over, they say, "You entrusted me with 5 talents. You entrusted me with 2 talents." What does that say to you about their relationship with their master, their boss? They trust, yeah. Yeah, they trust this guy.
And he invested in them.
Yes.
They were to invest further.
Yes. And we can assume then it was that trust which gave them the confidence to do what an average working peasant would have thought was crazy. I mean, these guys are investing in Bitcoin. Nobody is out there doing that, right? I can tell you right now, Tom, you don't have any Bitcoin, and I don't have any Bitcoin either. But our son, who is 23, he said to my wife, "Mom, I think I'll take some of the money in my investment account and invest in some Bitcoin." And she's kind of like, but he's 23, and he's not investing all of his little savings so far. He can afford to ride the market, okay? So these guys believe that the master trusts them, and that in trust gives them confidence, and so they're off investing in cryptocurrency and trying to make the best money they can. Now let's look at the third guy's words. What does he first say? What's he say? Somebody pull out what he say. "No, you're a hard man. I know you're a hard man." What else does he say? Yes. Yes, 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 yes. And then what's the third thing? What does it do to the man himself? He was afraid. Yes, yes. So what's the relationship like between this servant and the boss? Calls him crooked. That's right, that's right. A little crooked, okay. Harsh. He fears him. Where's the trust here? No trust, right? And so he doesn't trust him, and he's afraid, and so he says, "I'm going to make sure I don't take any chances. I'm going to bury this in a safe place, and nobody's going to know where it is, and I'll be at no risk." How does all this help you think about the parable? Maybe a little differently than you have before, or maybe exactly like you have before.
The master knew his servants, and the one who got 1 talent, he trusted him the least.
He did, yes, and he proved that mistrust.
He proved the master correct.
Yeah, yeah. And, yeah, Tom?
It tells me that meritocracy has always ruled.
Yeah, yeah.
Continues to today.
Yep, the one who he was trusted the most and had the most ability gets the most, and he proves it was a wise investment by the master. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I said Sunday, it's not just our age that faces these struggles with abundance. Meritocracies have existed a long time. Yeah. So I think that what's fascinating with the story is that, and notice too that the third person used about 3 times as many words. Later tonight, just for fun, you can count how many words the first 2 servants used, and the last one, I think it's three times, maybe 3 or 4 times, which is fascinating that when we fail or don't meet expectations, even of our own self, we waste a lot more words and wind, don't we, to make excuses, to figure things out. But when you meet your expectations or meet your goals, you don't have to use talk, right? Because your actions live that out. So I think that for me, the key piece is this trust between the first 2 and the boss, and the lack of trust in the third one. And for me, that is the key of the story. And that's what brings the twist. And that's where the servant, the regular Jewish servants, probably misunderstood the beginning of the tale. That the one who was prudent was really the one who lost out because he never trusted the boss. And the first 2 is all about for them and their trust. And so I think the story is about our willingness to trust God. That if you think of a parable being one thing, and that if we can trust God, it really emboldens us to take more risks, to take more chances as people of faith. And that where we find ourselves not wanting to take those risks, maybe it's because, as you said, Alice, maybe we're afraid. You know.
And actually, on that line is, don't make fear make you miss out on one of God's blessings for you.
Yeah. Tom, that'd be that's a great line for the whole thing. Maybe we should just stop there. It's 3 minutes after 7. Say that again, Tom, one more time.
Don't let fear make you miss out on God's blessings.
Yeah. Don't let fear make you miss out on God's blessings. I don't have anything better to say, folks, and it's 7:04. Thank you all for tonight. Next week, we are is Ash Wednesday service, 7 o'clock. Different time, 7 o'clock. We'll be in here, Ash Wednesday service. And then in 2 weeks, we'll be back to regular schedule at 6 o'clock. And we'll be doing a month-long series through the end of March on prayers of the Bible. The first week, I'll do focus on a prayer of praise. And I'll at least have one I'll focus on Psalm 8. Chris Hensley will do the second week of that series, and he's going to do prayers of lament. There'll be Psalm 22. And the third week of that series is prayers of thanksgiving. I think I'm picking Psalm 103. And then the last week, I'll do the Lord's Prayer. So, and all this will be in the newsletter. But we'll shifting gears, and we'll be looking at the poetry of these prayers. So, thank you all so much. This has been fun. This series has been fun for me. I hope you all have enjoyed it. If anybody wants to get a book, let me know. Thank you.